Good evening and welcome to the latest Red Robin pre-season mini-pod, which is once again powered by Budget Ties Auto Centre and 𝗕𝓸𝓫𝓲𝓷𝓼 Chartered Accountants, which I'm delighted to say have agreed to sponsor the podcast again in 2023. So fantastic local companies who not only sponsor the podcast, but of course put huge amount of sums into the club by sponsoring them. And of course, Andy Steele, who is the founder of 𝗕𝓸𝓫𝓲𝓷𝓼 Chartered Accountants, has recently been appointed to the new board of directors at the club. He's going to be looking at finance. And Budget Ties also sends to the choice of players, staff and supporters at Hull Kingston Rovers, a real local company who are steeped in red and white heritage. So please go check them out. Two fantastic companies, like I've already said, and are doing great things for the podcast. And of course, most importantly, Hull Kingston Rovers. This week, I'm joined by podcast regular Graham Turner. He joins me to discuss our upcoming pre-season friendly against the Leeds Rhinos. And we look back at our defeat to 𝗕𝘂𝗻𝗲𝗄𝗏 Rovers. We will also discuss how we might line up against Wigan in our season opener and assess what the supporters' expectations should be in 2023. Don't forget we are live on YouTube and Facebook right now. So if you have got anything you want to say, any comments you want to make, please make sure you put them down below and we'll read them and answer them as we go along. Good evening, Graham. How are you tonight?
I'm very well, Chris. Thank you. Looking forward to the season. How are you?
Yeah, almost like deja vu, isn't it? Right. We will discuss the Featherstone Rovers pre-season friendly first. A 28-0 defeat at the hands of Rovers. They were looking pretty strong that game. 2,976 people in attendance for what was, of course, Craig Hall's testimonial foremost. Fantastic servant to Hull Kingston Rovers. Great turnout from the Red Army. I reckon there was well over 1,000 red and whites there. So fantastic support from the east side of Hull. The lineup that night was for the Robins. PLT at fullback, Ethan Ryan and 𝗕𝘂𝗱𝗴𝗲𝗁 out on the right. 𝗕𝘂𝗱𝗴𝗏 making his non-competitive debut for the Robins. Sam Wood and Lewis Senior out on the left. Rowan Milnes partnering Abdul in the halves. George King and Sam Luckley at prop. Jez Litton started at hooker. And then we had Sam Luckley and Frankie Holton in the second row. Frankie Holton and Jimmy Kynhorst in the second row. And Dean Hadley at loose forward. Graham, probably not the result that many supporters wanted or expected. But then again, results aren't particularly important in pre-season, are they? Although, nevertheless, still a disappointing scoreline at the end of the day.
Yeah, disappointing, I think, is a word. First and foremost, fair play to Hawley for his testimonial, etc. As you mentioned in the intro, Chris, very loyal servant to our club. So really pleased for Craig Hall there. Yep, disappointed in the result as it stood. We shouldn't read too much into pre-season results, I don't think. It's more about, for me, performances, time on the pitch, blowing those cobwebs off after a long, hard pre-season, getting those combinations started. And I think what we should see coming up at the weekend against Leeds is a lot more intensity into our game. Hopefully we'll see a lot more skill level on show than we saw on Friday night. And I think we should see pretty much to our, as we see it, the first team out there for good minutes on the pitch. Yes, there'll be interchanges. That Peters has already said that within the media this week. There'll be interchanges, but I think we should see pretty much what he feels is his starting 17, 19 players, something like that, with a couple of others thrown in to sort of make up some numbers there. But I think it should give us a better idea of where we're at as we build intensity now towards Wigan in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, Willie Peters shared the supporters' frustration after that Featherstone Rovers defeat. He said, "Obviously, I'm disappointed. We knew it was going to be a challenge, and that's what we got. They were strong, and I'm disappointed in some individual performances. We graduated some young kids, but I was expecting a better performance after what we'd been doing in training. The beauty is it's pre-season, and we have plenty of work to do." I mean, when I look at that game, there wasn't really much to take away from it. 𝗕𝘂𝗱𝗴𝗏𝗁𝗁 making his debut. Some of the young lads, 6 academy players making coming into the side and getting on the pitch for a good 15 minutes. Other than that, Graham, I was pretty much scratching my head at trying to think of a positive from that, because it was a pretty ruthless performance from Featherstone, and we just never really got going in it.
No, and I think, you know, they've got different objectives for their season in terms of building towards a Super League push for their season coming up. I was pleased to see Lewis Johnson back on the field and getting some minutes under his belt. I think we all saw what potentially had before he got his injury last season, and that was disappointing to lose him for such a long period last season. So I was pleased that he could sort of shake that injury nightmare off and get some meaningful minutes out on the pitch. Good to see Abdul back as well in the shirt. Again, I think we lost a little bit by not having him in the halves last year as an option there. So it'd be good to see him knuckling down and getting a regular spot in the halves and being the player that we know he was from probably 2 years ago when he was probably on best form for us. So that was good to see those two long-term absentees back. And like you say, they're probably slim pickings in terms of the overall positives when you're looking at the result, and the fact that we've been able to give some of the academy graduates good minutes on the pitch representing the club is good again for their development in the longer term. But like you say, when we've read what Willie Peters says about world-class attitude and efforts, etc., I don't think that many people could stick their hand up and said that they delivered that on Friday night. But it is pre-season; they can get that out of the system. They can show us what they can do over the coming weeks. Yeah,
and if anybody does follow Lewis Johnson's dad on Twitter, that they'll know that Lewis is they're saying that he's the fittest he's ever been. Obviously, missed the World Cup. Decided to do that so he could make sure that he was back in peak condition come the start of the season. He was probably one of the standouts from the game, but like you said, it was slim pickings. One player who was in the squad, who definitely won't be in the squad for the Leeds friendly, is Greg Richards. He's moved on to pastures new to Toulouse on a season-long loan deal, Graham. I suppose many supporters were maybe surprised to see him stick around at the end of last season. Obviously, he was under contract, but people would maybe be a bit more surprised to see him move on to Toulouse, especially at the start of the season.
Yeah, I think I read Willie Peters' quotes there around it. It sort of identified Richards to potentially not have much game time this year with him being down the pecking order, and with strengthened definitely in the pack this year. So you can't imagine that he'd sort of take positions over the imports that we brought in for those forward positions. And yeah, to give him game time, he was out of contract at the end of the season. Is the best thing for him to stick around at his age for his development, etc. And I think for both parties, this particular deal works out well. He's got an opportunity to go and live and learn the culture of another country, which is, you know, obviously exciting. Toulouse are on a push as well for that Super League place next year. They'll want to bounce straight back, so they've got some steel and a reason to play well next season as well. So I think if he can get back in there and play well in that particular team, then yeah, who knows what that year will bring. And again, I don't want to say this at all, but he's gone on loan, I believe. So we've got the option to call him back if necessary. I believe that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, out of all the positions, you'd probably say the pack was maybe the area where maybe a player was dispensable. So, you know, many supporters may be surprised to see Richards depart. Not for me. I think, you know, he'd have been twiddling his thumbs because you look at the players in front of him and the players who are coming up, not less Zach Fishwick. So I think that the competition would have been hot this season. So yeah, of course we wish him all the best, and if he does return in the red and whites, I'm sure he'll be welcome back. But good luck to Greg Richards over at Toulouse. We move on Sunday, our final pre-season game of the before we start the Super League campaign against Wigan, the Leeds Rhinos, and we're expecting that lineup on Sunday against Leeds, Graham, to be pretty much the lineup that's going to face Wigan.
Yeah, I think that'll give us an indication of where Willie Peters sees everybody at. He's talked about putting people in on form. Now, I think that's a big statement to go on after we've just seen them in one friendly where nobody covered themselves in any glory. So I think he'll probably go with what his gut says around how people have been performing in training and showing up day in, day out for that. But yeah, I expect to see a lot of those, what we would class as the regular first teamers back in the mix that weren't necessarily in the mix for Featherstone. And I think we'll hopefully see a different intensity and attitude and mindset from the players on Sunday.
Yeah, and one player who is going to be lining up, although many people thought he wouldn't, especially after he was expected to be out for at least 2 weeks, is 𝗕𝘂𝗱𝗴𝗲𝗀. Willie Peters announced today that he's returned back from his injury early. He's passed all the tests. He's fit and raring to go, and he will be in the 22-man squad, which is set to be named tomorrow lunchtime. If you're listening to this live, and he's not the only player who's expected to be coming into the side as well. The likes of James Batchelor, Jesse Sue, Reece Kennedy, and the evergreen Sean Kenny-Dowell, Lachlan Coote, and Matty Parcell, all expected to feature against the Leeds Rhinos on Sunday. He's surprised to see him. I'm guessing, Graham, if he's fit and he's put his hand up, there's no reason not to play him.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think it's a case of him putting his hand up. I think it's the medical team declaring him fit to be able to play, because there's absolutely no reason to risk him at this particular stage. And if he needed an extra week or two, so be it. Let him have it. But if the medical team are convinced and the player himself is raring to go, then yeah, let's get him some minutes, good minutes under the belt, and it's almost a little added bonus to have him back for the start of the season. Presuming he and the rest of them come out unscathed.
Graham, imagine he wasn't fit and he wasn't fit to line up against Leeds, and he wasn't fit for the Wigan game. Who would have been your choice at 13?
There's a couple of options, but probably Hadley for me, just to give us that bit of solidity in defence. We looked like we needed a bit more in defence on Friday evening to shore that up. So I think some experience in there, some nous and some knowledge that Hadley brings to that setup. I think I'd probably go with him.
Yeah, I mean, Matty Staunton is an option there as well, isn't he?
Is, yeah. I do like Staunton. I think he's quite dynamic. He's different to Hadley. I guess it's horses for courses, really. What type of game we want to play at that time, or how the game is going. You could argue the case for both.
Yeah, was you surprised to see Matty Staunton get a little bit of criticism from Willie Peters when he came in? I think Willie Peters said that Matty Staunton hadn't hit the heights that he could do. My understanding is that he's had a fantastic pre-season and he's very much in Willie Peters' thoughts, and he wants to propel him into that regular first team slot. But on the face of it, I thought he had a great season. But I suppose, coaches, etc., look at things differently to what supporters do. Yeah,
they definitely do. And we as fans see things differently. We don't see players day in, day out on the training pitch, and we don't see and listen to what they have in individual or team meetings as well. So we're not privy to any of that. We just see that 80 minutes game time of a weekend. But again, sometimes that could be a bit of sort of psychological management by Peters, that understanding your players and what makes them best tick is also crucial. So is Staunton the type of player that does need that kick up the backside to challenge him, to really push him on? Does he need that every now and again? And that might be clever from Peters, just to sort of get in his psyche and give him that verbal kick up the backside that challenges him to go and prove that he can be better and reach those heights that Peters thinks. It could be a bit of psychological mind games as well.
And that Leeds game, although we've talked about the Featherstone result and how it's not important in terms of results and pre-season, etc., everything's gearing up to that Wigan for being high, isn't it? For being optimistic. Off the field, there's going to be plenty of razzmatazz. A defeat against Leeds and a poor performance isn't what's going to get the supporters up for it, is it? I suppose. So there is maybe a little bit of expectation, a little bit of pressure on the players to at least put a good showing in against Leeds, because we want the momentum going into that opening game to be high. We want it to be good. We want it to be positive, and there's no better way than doing that than coming off the back of a result against the Leeds Rhinos.
Yeah, and I think if we go back to the back end of last season, that last game of last season, everybody was buoyant after that, and that sort of siege mentality that we created at the KC on that final day, and how we galvanised the squad and the supporters after that were, completely buzzing, quite rightly. I think that sort of fell a bit flat on Friday evening with that defeat. But you're right. I think that it's not necessarily the result that's important on Sunday. It's the level of performance. It's the attitude. It's the mindset that people go out with that is gearing up towards the game against Wigan as the opener. And many people listening to this will have been at that opening game for Wigan 12 months ago, when we all turned up with that same optimism and then left with our tails between our legs after we'd got completely outplayed by a very good Wigan team on match day 1.
Yeah, one thing that I'm really looking forward to on Sunday is seeing how we line up with 𝗕𝘂𝗱𝗲𝗀𝗏 and 𝗕𝘂𝗱𝗏𝗏𝗲. They're both expected to play. Lytton played in the friendly against Featherstone, starting. This should be, we are, like I said, we're expecting 𝗕𝘂𝗱𝗏𝗏𝗏 to play, so this will be his first outing in 2023. Willie Peters is coming from the NRL, where sides often play with one hooker for 80 minutes.
Yeah.
At the fans forum, the RSG fans forum in November, he said that they probably won't line up with them both on the pitch at the same time, which is what we have become accustomed to in the Tony Smith era. At times them two are unplayable when those on the pitch at the same time. Often you'd see them your hookers dovetail each other, one on, one off, but Tony Smith found a way of getting them both on the pitch, which caused the opposition problems. It's going to be interesting to see how Willie Peters lines us up on Sunday, isn't it? Because the two, many clubs, if these two players were at different clubs, they would be your starting hookers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we saw lots of glimpses last season of how important the number 9s are to us. And with Lytton sort of seamlessly replacing 𝗕𝘂𝗱𝗏𝗏𝗏 when he picked up some knocks or when there was interchanges, etc., I think we saw the absolute benefit of a really good number 9 and what it can do to us in attack. And sometimes it leaves you vulnerable if they've got both number 9s on the pitch at the same time from a defensive perspective, because those two smaller players invariably tend to get picked out by the big men running up the middle. So, like you said, there's a challenge that Peters has got to overcome, and he's coming from that NRL background where a lot of clubs will play that one hooker for 80 minutes or very long minutes, and if they're playing very long minutes, they often get one of the Minchella type player to step in and cover those minutes, rather than bringing on a specialist hooker again to keep that size in the middle and protect that area there, rather than leaving yourself vulnerable at two key spots. So it's going to be interesting. We all know what they can bring when we've got ball in hand and going forward and playing well. That's a given for us, and we look really exciting when that's working really well. You go back to last season and look at the times when we absolutely ripped teams to shreds. It was when they were firing and we were playing well. But not always does that transpire into tries for us. We were one of the lowest point scorers in the season. We were lacking in the try scoring department across the full season as well. So for all that bravado that we've got with the Lyttons and 𝗕𝘂𝗱𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 of this world, bringing that dynamic to us, we've got to convert those opportunities that those two can create. We've got to be more ruthless, on the back of their opportunities.
Yeah. That's one big dilemma for Willie Peters. The other one for me is who starts on the right edge. 𝗕𝘂𝗱𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, you imagine, is a shoe-in to be the centre. Of course, Ethan Ryan had a great season last season, not just in attacking defence as well, but we've seen what Louis Senior can do. He started on the left against Featherstone, obviously in the absence of Ryan Hall. Sam Wood partnered him on the left in the absence of Sean Kenny-Dowell. It must be a straight shootout between Wood and Senior. Ryan and Senior. Do you think it's Ryan who's going to get the nod?
I'm not sure, because Senior had a really good World Cup, didn't they, for Ireland? They're both in the Irish squad. Obviously, Ryan wasn't playing, but I don't know. I can't call it really. They've both got strengths, and I'm sure they've both got areas to improve on as well. But I think you're right. It will be a straight shootout. and it could be that we see 40 minutes for one and 40 minutes for the other, and that's a straight shootout, as you say, for the spot in the side against Wigan in 2 weeks.
Yeah, but it's a luxury we haven't been afforded for a long time, is it, to have that competition?
No, it isn't. And again, I go back to my point from a minute ago. We've got exciting people out wide. We know Ryan Hall knows where the try line is. We know Ethan Ryan's got pace to burn. We know what Senior can do. We need to put them in the spaces and create the opportunities for them to do their stuff. If we're not doing that, we could have the best winger in the world if we're not getting the ball to them in good areas and good spaces and creating good chances for them. It just doesn't matter who's out there. So we've got to get that right first and foremost in terms of determining who's the first choice. But hopefully they will push each other. If that is a straight shootout between themselves, they will push each other all the time in training and match day to make sure that they claim the jersey as opposed to giving it up to their oppo.
Yeah. I had some comments over on YouTube. Matt Brady, Michael Morton, Paul Cook. I wonder if it's the Paul Cook. If it is you, Cookie, please let us know. Great to see us back, lads. Keith Pollard over on Facebook. He's put his starting lineup for, I'm guessing it's a Leeds game. He's actually gone for Senior on the right wing. He's gone with a starting lineup of Lachlan Coote, Louis Senior. I'll put it on screen so you can see it. Sean Kenny-Dowell, Ryan Hall, Lewis Abdul, Jesse Sue, Matty Parcells starting at hooker, George King with Batchelor and Staunton at second row, Minichella at loose forward with a bench of Litton, Johnson, Holton, Kennedy and Lynette. Interestingly, Graham, one of the rule changes is that sides can now name an 18th man who can come on in the event of 3 players failing a HIA test, which is why obviously you'll see the extra man named in a match day squad now.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm guessing that player will have to be designated. It can't be one of the 5. I'm sure there'll be a formal procedure that they'll have to do on match day to put the team sheets in and who's that designated player. But again, I think it's a sensible approach to take. We all saw the amount of players that do get head knocks that do have to go for HIAs, and absolutely player welfare has to be first and foremost across any of this. We've seen with the high profile Doddy Weirs of this world, with the Rob Burrows of this world, what impact it can have on people. I'm not saying that they got directly of head knocks, but we've got to protect our players. They're out there entertaining us, and their welfare has to come first and foremost. So I'm all for this particular rule. I just hope that there's that level of independence from doctors, and it's not abused in any way by sides who just want to use an extra substitution or interchange, if you like, without it necessarily resulting from a HIE. So I hope there's none of that. But yeah, anything we can do to support player welfare, all for that. Yeah, another change as well is if a referee, if a player receives medical treatment whilst on the pitch, that player has to leave for 2 minutes to get a green card, and they must leave the pitch for 2 minutes now. So again, that's another one, isn't it? Where will players? I think sometimes players have been accused of feigning injury to try and either stop the game. Will this reduce that, knowing that for 2 minutes? I mean, 2 minutes can be. As we have seen in the past, Graham, 2 minutes is a long time, isn't it? And it can change a game when you're down to 12 men.
Absolutely, it can. And again, it goes back to that swinging it the other way. Do people not receive the treatment that they need because they know they're going to put the side down to 12 men and potentially at a disadvantage and play on through an injury that needs attention? So again, that's a fine balance to have there. But again, think it's all geared up towards player welfare and making sure that they are fit to return to play. Then yes, again, it's got to be managed in the correct way. And I think where we've seen it certainly in football of feigning injury, dare I say, with a view to time wasting, we've sort of seen incidents in rugby creeping in to our game where fans get disgruntled that they feel that the opposition player is milking it or taking the mick. So if this helps to clamp that out, then fine, no problem. But as long as it don't go too far the other way for me, where players who genuinely need to get attention choose not to because they feel it will be disadvantaging their team.
Yeah. Craig,
I've also,
Chris,
I've also heard that Mrs. Johnson says 2 minutes is a very long time as well.
Well, marathon. Craig Escrut watching on YouTube. Point, Graham. Great to have you on, Craig. Do you think it should take 3 HIA failures to use the 18th man? If one fails a HIA, then you're down a man anyway. So in his opinion, you should be able to use that 18th man as soon as a player has to go off, which is, I suppose it's a good point, isn't it?
It is. And then I guess it's sort of going back, if you think a few years where the number of interchanges that clubs were allowed to use during the game has gradually come down. So they've tried to sort of speed that element of the game up. I don't quite know the numbers, but it could be that it logistically it moves that level of interchanges up. But again, it's a fair point to make that if somebody goes off for a head injury assessment, should you be disadvantaged as a team? No. Well, if you have to use your interchanges, fine. But if you have 2 or 3 in a row, then you could be 2 or 3 interchanges down very quickly, and your game plan's out the window. So
you could easily have, Graham, a player go off after a couple of minutes. Quite easily happens, and then for the next 78 minutes, you're down to 3 interchanges. So it's a great point that Craig makes.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is absolutely. And we have had players go off dead early, haven't we? In games, we know those games where it's absolutely happened.
Very briefly, then, Graham. Starting lineup for Rovers on Sunday. I'm expecting it to be Lachlan Coote at fullback, Ryan Hall on the left with Sean Kenny-Dowell.
Yeah.
I think Ethan Ryan will get the nod on the right with 𝗕𝘂𝗱𝗲𝗁𝗂𝗁 inside of him. I think it'll be Jordan Abdul and Mikey Lewis in the halves. At prop, and I want to get your opinion on that, I think 𝗕𝘂𝗱𝗏𝗂 and George King will be our starting props. And I think we will start with Matty Parcell in the hooker role. For me, second row will be James Batchelor and Kane Lynette, with Elliot Minchella on the number 13. Trying to pick the interchanges, I think that's almost the toughest part of it.
Yeah, I think with the fact that there's going to be 21, 22 in the squad, I think we'll see plenty of interchanges. So yeah, it could disrupt the game later on if both sides are sort of taking that tone. But I'd like to think that there'll be a good solid 20, 25 minutes where we might only get 1 or 2 interchanges as sort of per normal, and we'd see a settled side giving it some. I think the 𝗕𝘂𝗱𝗏𝗃 George King combo could be a good one. And I think what I'm pleased that we've managed to do in terms of recruitment is take a lot of the heavy lifting off of George King's shoulders. There were far too many games last season where we just looked to Kingy for those hard yards, for that graft up the middle that we know he can do, but he wasn't getting the breather to do it. Minute in, minute out. It was just him having to do it. They've got that support. They've got Kennedy to come in as well, 𝗕𝘂𝗱𝗏𝗏𝗃, etc. So I'd like to think that we can make better use of King's assets in our pack to really be dynamic when he's on the field, rather than just drain his tanks too early in a game.
He definitely needs to be spelled better, doesn't he? And he's almost a victim of his own success.
He is, absolutely.
He does the hard yards, the fact that he does the long minutes, the fact that he will just keep going. And I suppose the only thing I would say about George King is that a lot of times his performance was very consistent, but it was maybe a 7 out of 10 every game. We need him to be spelling at 8, 9 out of 10, don't we? I think with them interchanges that with the players we've brought in, I think there's more opportunity for him to be hitting them heights. Maybe smaller minutes, but bigger impact during them smaller minutes.
Yeah. That definitely. Again, one question I want to sort of throw across to everybody as well, and yourself, Chris, as well, is I'm not sure if you thought about it, but we've got 12 players out of contract at the end of this season. And there's some big names in there. So Coote, Dagger, Hall, SKD, Ethan Ryan, Sam Wood, a couple of the younger lads as well, Okoro Moore, Lewis Johnson, Dean Hadley, Kane Lynette as well as Jimmy Kinehorse. So there's some big names for us in there. And I think I made the point last season on one or two occasions where that whole left edge that we have known and grown to love over the last couple of years potentially could be gone by the end of the season.
Well, Graham, if we're operating at salary cap, which we've been told that we are, and we've brought in Jesse Sue, Reece Kennedy, 𝗕𝘂𝗱𝗴𝗲𝗁 on big deals longer than just this season, there's going to have to be movement, isn't there? There is going to have to be movement to bring in more players. So, but the caveat to that is I'm just reading Sean Kenny-Dowell saying that he's fitter than ever.
Yeah, he's fit as ever at 35 years of age. He feels as fit as a fiddle when he was in his NRL days.
Ryan Hall doesn't seem to be, looking to retire anytime soon. No. So there's players playing for contracts in terms of, they want that security. So that obviously spurs them on. And then you've got players who may be indispensable and we need to keep. So it is going to be really interesting to see what happens, especially who we tie down. Because we did a lot of business early last season. We look at the big contracts that were handed out. We did a lot of business early. Are we going to see that again? Because I'm guessing that one of the things that is a feature of the side now is that we like to get business done early. We like to have a settled side. So you'd imagine come April, May time. Is it May when players are free to start talking to?
Yeah, is it May, June?
Yeah,
May, June time, isn't it? Definitely, yeah. Mid-season, isn't it? Yeah.
But yeah, out of them, who are you keeping?
Like you said, there's merits in offering 1-year deals potentially to some of the Ryan Halls. You look at the caliber of player of Ryan Hall, of SKD, and the way that they've looked after their bodies as a professional athlete over that time period of their career, and you've got an absolute, providing they can keep injury free, of course, and maintain standards. You've got, I think, opportunities for 1-year deals in there. But I wouldn't want us to sort of rely on that without having some sort of long-term planning in the mix of what does that left edge look like. Yes, it'll tide us over for this year and potentially one more on the back of it, but we can't afford much longer than that because they'll all be pushing nearer 40 by the time that they get to that age on that left edge. But there's opportunities there for some of the younger ones, the Lewis Johnsons of this world, to establish themselves as players. And who knows what the youth academy will throw up in the next year or two as well. Can we bring some of those players into the mix and blood them in as well as we have done with some of the ones that were successful last season? Like you say, what does recruitment look like? Can we get good business done early? And that seems to be the way that Peters likes to operate. So yeah, it's going to be interesting in that department.
Yeah, Adam Wadford over on Facebook makes a great point. It's likely to be the last season for the likes of SKD, Hall and Lynette. We've got to be careful not to keep players too long just out of loyalty and because of how good they have been in the past. We've been burnt a few times, haven't we, where we've kept other players maybe just one season too many. Yeah. And I suppose...
Great point, Adam, that,
Yeah, we need to be ruthless, don't we? If we're, like you said, if we're going to keep that conveyor belt of talent coming from the academy, they need to know that there's opportunities ahead of them. And, that's why we're the ones talking on the podcast and we're not the head coaches of a Super League team, because it's these decisions that are the difficult ones to make.
Absolutely. That's what the head coaches and the assistants get paid the money for, is to make these calls. And like Muppets like you and I just get to sit and chat about it and retain our good luck. So, but the point that Adam made is a good one. And, if we do show that sentimentality card, does that take away from us in terms of that ruthless attitude that we as fans want to see in terms of improvements within the squad, improvements within the league ladder, really challenging for trophies at the end of the season? I think many fans will feel that we should be doing that at the end of each season. And what is success looking like for us this? What do we accept as success?
You just cut out a little bit there, Graham, with your internet, but I've teed it up nicely, because I suppose, what are your expectations for 2023? I've seen a number of supporters over on social media, etc., saying that actually Willie Peters' first season in charge, as long as we're competitive, we don't necessarily expect to make the playoffs, etc., etc. For me, I think top 6, I think that is well within our reach. And if we don't hit that top 6 spot, as of now, I'll be disappointed. I think, nailing my close to the mast, I'm expecting us to be in that top 6 come the end of the season.
Yeah, I would agree. Apologies for the internet connection. I was just sort of making the point about, expectations, etc. So, yeah, I would agree. I think we should be at a stage now where we've got a settled squad back in Super League. We're established in there. We shouldn't be looking over our shoulders come August, September, October time for the trapdoor at all. We should be looking forward, and we've got all the right noises being made off the field with the club. The way that it's been restructured off the field, the ground purchase, etc., has all set us up for this. I think if we look and compare ourselves to when the Wigans and Saints of this world recruit a head coach, what do their fans say? Do they expect, we'll give Nathan Pete a year to get his feet under the table, and then sorry, I beg your pardon, yeah, Matty Pete, the chance to get his feet under the table, or do we expect us to be competitive, to be challenging for those honours? I think it's the latter, that they expect that. I think that's the mentality and attitude we need to create for us, rather than just accepting mediocrity and hoping that we do enough to scrape into the playoffs or at least survive and not be in the relegation mix. I think we should be aiming better than that. And I think the noises and attitude that we've seen from Peters so far indicate that him and the squad hopefully have got that same mentality as well, that we're not here to just make up the numbers. We are here to challenge. We do believe that we should be in that top 6. We do believe that we should be challenging for those honours. And we showed it in glimpses with semi-finals in the last couple of years, etc. But for me to get for the club to get back to where we believe it should be, they need to be making those next steps forward. And they're the hardest ones, because as we all sit here 2 weeks away from the season starting, every club is saying the same thing about aspirations and top 6 and grand finals and challenge cups, etc. So what are we going to do to put ourselves in that position to be challenging, rather than just be knocking around that mid-table and hoping we scrape the playoffs and making sure that we're not looking over our shoulder come September, October?
No, but it is a point worth making that this is one of the most expensively assembled Hull Kingston Rovers squads in our history. It's we've got one of the most experienced and expensively assembled backroom staff setups we've ever had. So for me, the seasons of free hits, and we'll give him a season to bed in. And, with the trajectory that Super League's on, the eye that IMG's casting over us now, with us not knowing what the future of Super League is going to be, we need to be dining at the top table. And that starts for me this season. We need to be competitive. We need to be competing near or at the top. And I think that starts from our first game against Wigan Warriors. And for me, it's more important than ever that we get off to a good start this season, because, like you've already alluded to, Graham, it's probably going to be one of the most competitive Super League seasons we've ever had. Yeah,
absolutely. It's shaping up that way. And look, you never know what the season's going to bring to clubs in terms of injuries and the way that clubs hit form or not, as the case may be. But you're right, we've got to control what we can control, which is what we do. And that, putting everything else aside, we don't want to be down there battling for survival. We want to be dining at that top table. We want to see what the IMG proposals are going to bring and hopefully be part of that and give us the stability that we need to operate at that level, the top level, for a long while, rather than just making do and surviving and coming up with, we've been the plucky losers. That for me, we've got to get rid of that and adopt the clinical attitudes of the Leeds Rhinos of this world. Look how successful the Leeds, Wigans and Saints have been. What are they doing that we're not doing? What have they got that we haven't got? And can we force our way into that sort of that upper echelon of clubs that have been really successful? That's where I think we should be aiming for.
Yeah, definitely. And while we're talking potentially the top of Super League, 𝗕𝘂𝗱𝗲𝗀 just asks, who will be your bottom 4? For me, Catalan, Wakefield, Lee and Salford. do you know what? I don't think he's that far away, and I think Catalan might be the surprise package this season, not necessarily for the right things. I think they might struggle this season looking at their squad and just looking at who they've got around at the moment. I don't think they'll be hitting the heights that they have done previous seasons.
Yeah, I've heard a couple of people say that, and I've not necessarily understood why, but if it is looking at the squad, but Catalans is always a tough place to go into. We never seem to really do well there, and many teams struggle going over there. So I think their home form will see them right, no doubt. But I'm interested by Keith's comment there about Salford, as in they were one of the surprise packages of last season. What is it that's changed for them to be down there, in his opinion?
Yeah. And Salford apparently today batting off a six-figure bid for Brodie Croft. So he's in demand from the NRL at the moment. But I mean, at the moment, Graham, everyone's predicting Leigh and Wakefield to be the bottom two. But it only takes for one of them to be the surprise package, and boom, someone else is in trouble.
So, Leigh and Wakefield will be lapping that up, and they'll be pinning that on the notice boards around the stadium to say, look, this is what everybody thinks about us. Let's go and stick two fingers up to them and show them that they're all wrong. And like you say, Wakefield, what if they can get a run together? Leigh, we don't know too much about Leigh, but we know that they're obviously coming up, and it's going to be a challenge for them. But look, we've struggled against those clubs that have come up. We haven't been dominant against them. We've struggled. So that's not a given that we're going to take those easy points off Leigh. So we've got to be on our guard from, like you say, minute 1 of week 1 right to the end of week 26, 27, wherever we're going up to.
Yeah, definitely. So the anticipation is building ahead of Sunday's game against Leeds Rhinos. Credit to the club as well for making ticket prices affordable. I know if you've bought them in advance, so it's a tenner for adults, £5 for kids. I know they go up on match day, but they have done a good job there in making it affordable for everybody to attend if you have got your tickets in advance. Just a couple more things, Graham, very quickly before we wrap up. A new appointment to the board of directors, Ian Richardson coming in. Another one who's excelled in his field of work, born in Hessel, trained as solicitor, serial entrepreneur now, and another I suppose ticking the box. It's all looking positive off the field, isn't it?
It is, and it's another person who is successful in the field that they operate in. So surrounding the top table at the club with those successful people, and a lot of them local people as well, and coupled with the expertise that Paul Lakin can bring to the table, we know all that Neil brings to the table as well for the club. So that for me is setting the club up in the right direction off the field, and the drive off the field should be in good hands, we would like to think, and the opportunities that they may bring as a collective. That there's obviously developments to the stadium that are needed and have been talked about. The purchase of the stadium itself was a big one last year. So it'd be interesting and exciting, I think, to see what those people bring to the game. I'm sure they won't get involved in picking the team or anything like that, but it'll be interesting to see, as a business, as a commercial entity, what Hull Kingston Rovers and the brand of Hull KR looks like moving forward, and the potential development plans in and around the stadium. What does that look like? Does that bring any more commercial revenue to the club? Can that be used to sort of sustain the club even further and reduce the reliance on the deep pockets of Neil, etc. So another good appointment in terms of successful person, local person. Hopefully they'll bring their expertise to the table and come up with a solution of ideas and a package of ideas for the club that helps drive us forward off the field and in the commercial world as well.
Good, very good. And last but not least, the club have just announced that the 𝗧𝗂𝗱𝗲𝗀𝗲 will be performing a free song set live on the pitch ahead of our game against Wigan, which is live on Channel 4. They will be welcoming the teams out onto the pitch, just like the Ratons did on Good Friday when we battered the Black and Whites. Hailing from Newton Le Willows near Manchester, they have actually played on the pitch before at Wigan Warriors DW Stadium, so this isn't their first rugby league game. I bet not a lot of people knew that. Check out the hit Sarajevo, Graham. I think it's one of my favourites. I think you'll enjoy it as well. But very quickly, Graham, it's fantastic to see the club once again making rugby league an event.
It is, and it's more than just an 80 minutes of the game now. The feel around Craven Street, the feel with the live music. I think we all refer back to that derby day with the Raytons and the buzz that sort of created and how well that was received. At the time and the feedback it's got since then, and the fact that we're still talking about it now has left an impression. So let's hope that they bring the same attitude and enthusiasm that the Raytons brought and get the crowd up for it. Let's hope they propel us to the same result for the opening day that we got when the Raytons performed for us. But yeah, it's great to see that off-field or match day experience enhanced for the supporters, so that it becomes more of an event, like you say, rather than just turning up to a match.
Amen to that. A huge thank you, Graham, for joining us this evening. A special thank you to everybody who's tuned in live on Facebook and YouTube, and a huge thank you to you if you are listening to it on podcast. We are the Red Robin Podcast pre-season mini-pod, which is powered by 𝗓𝓸𝓫𝓲𝓷𝓼 Chartered Accountants and Budget Ties Auto Centre. For now, let's live, love, laugh and be happy.